promising to overcome the obstacles and also to release the financial resources for low waste, low carbon, green economy, and maintaining a balance of economic development and environmental benefits. According to the timeline, the regulation framework, which has been approved by the Prime Minister and the ministries in 2022, is from the Institute for Policy and Strategy of Environmental Protection and Resources, in cooperation with GIZ, organized the workshop to collect the opinions on the regulation of issued by the Prime Minister for green bonds and green credits. I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Mai Thái Toàn, Deputy Director of the Institute of Strategy and Policies on Natural Resources and Environment, the Chair of the conference, Mr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải, Senior Economist from GIZ, Mr. Nguyễn Hoàng Vinh, Deputy Director of Finance, Banking and Financial Institution Department, Ministry of Finance, Mr. Vũ Chí Dũng, Director of International Cooperation Department, State Security Commission. From the Vietnam Banks Association, Mr. Nguyễn Phúc Hùng, General Secretary. From Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange, Ms. Trần Anh Đào, Deputy General Director. And Ms. Tạ Thị Bích Thảo, General Secretary of Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange. We'd like to also welcome the representatives from Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Justice, commercial banks, investment funds, businesses, and international organizations. I'd like to call for your attention on the spirit of the conference. We want to protect the environment, so therefore we limit the printings, and you can find the documents on the link that has been shared with you. And we will also send the documents to you through emails after the conference. And now Dr. Mai Thái Toàn, the Deputy Director of ISFRON, will give the welcoming remark.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The leaders, representative from different line ministries, and leaders and representing different banks, scientists, and delegates coming from the regulatory agencies, and all the participants who are present here directly, and for those, and good morning to everyone who are online. Let me present a little bit background, the rationale that we need to develop this, draft this to submit to Prime Minister. As you may know, that over the recent year, Vietnam has come up with very many various ambitious policy and strategies, especially in COP26. Our leadership made a strong commitment gearing towards the goal of zero carbon emission in 2050. So we have various plenty of ambitious policy mechanism from the government, as I mentioned, in terms of the legal framework issued in 2020. If you have time to read, we have introduced many new approaches related to how to control the flow of pollution, how to keep the air clean and water clear, and all the beautiful landscapes should be maintained. And with that, we strive for enhancing the living quality of our citizens and maintain our country in a sustainable development. So in order to do so, we need to mobilize various resources from both public and private sectors, and new tools to be applied. Emerging tools such as circular economy and green credit and green bonds are one of the channels in order to mobilize the resources serving the purpose of sustainable development. In the working plan of the government, Monterey Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment is delegated to develop the draft to submit the proposal on the promulgation of regulation on environmental criteria and issuance of green credit and green bond. So that is a chain of activities that we need to carry out. And as for our agency, institution for the strategy and policy on natural resources environment, we need to address a lot of technical questions, whether it's appropriate to include into the appendix 1, whether the screening criteria are compatible and accurate, and the threshold and indicators, are they appropriate or not? So we're very keen on consulting with you regarding whether the methodology and the approach is correct and thus are in line with the international experience. That is something that we're very keen on consulting with experts in this workshop. Today, the Institution for Strategy and Policy on Natural Resources Environment co-organized together with GIZ put together for this workshop today. And thank you for your precious time for all of those who are present here and who are present online. And today we encourage you to engage into the working spirit and open atmosphere, scientific, and with the goal to come up with the proposal to Prime Minister that are in line with the scientific based and legal framework and in line with international standards, so that the institutions that are in need of taking loan finance through the green credit, green bonds, so obtain that smoothly. So on the round table, we will break down all of the subject matter in detail so as we can come up with a draft as expected by the government. To save time, I would not to be lengthy and woody. So once again, thank you very much, and GIZ for being great companion and very supportive together with our institution throughout the journey. So on behalf of our ISPONDRA, Institution for Strategy and Policy on Natural Resources and Environment, thank you very much for your attention, for your participation. I'd like to wish all of you abundance of health and success in your career development, and I wish great success for our workshop today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opening remarks of Dr. Martin Plans. To continue, I'd like to introduce Dr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải, the Senior Economics of the GIZ, to deliver his presentation. Mr. Hải, please. Thank you, organizing committee. Dr. Mike Tidwan, the Deputy Director of the ISPONDRA from the Monterey. Ladies and gentlemen, so on behalf of the GIZ, I would like to warmly welcome all of you who are present in person here at the Rex Hotel, as well as to those who are present here online. Especially warmly welcome all the delegates who are representing the central line ministries such as Monterey, Ministry of Finance, MAT, Ministry of Justice, State Security Committee, and Vietnam Bank Association, Vietnam Stock Association, Vietnam Bond Association. They are the two coordinating agency with the GIZ together with Monterey to co-organize the workshop today. I also would like to warmly welcome all of you who are members of the two associations, including the financial institution, banks, investment funds, development investment fund, opportunity, and different cities, provinces, members of the drafting team and experts team of the GIZ, and from the ISPONDRA for co-developing the green taxonomy together with independent experts coming from institutions, research institutes, especially university and institutes from Ho Chi Minh City. After the consultation workshop, the experts together with us and ISPONDRA organized on the 27 November 2022, we'll organize another workshop. This workshop today is the first one to be held in order to concern your opinion, in order to submit to Prime Ministers on the criteria of environmental and verification of project finance through the green credit and green bond, including the green classification catalogs just proposed by ISPONRE. This is one step toward submission to the Prime Minister before the 31st of February to December 2022, in accordance with the law on environmental protection issued in 2022. Over the past more than 1 year, GIZ is delighted to be compliant with ISPONRE and the technical team to come up with the green taxonomy catalogs. That's a very important part in the broader program financed by the German government through the BNZ. Focus on 2 years of 2021-2022 on 3 very important components: the development of green classification catalog, issuance of the green credit, and risk prevention, DBFD, and as a CBI organization and financial initiative of the UN. Throughout the supporting process, we work closely with the World Bank, with the IFC, on the providing consultancy and reviewing global green classification, and especially in the issuance of the green credit and bond. I warmly welcome the experts from GBI, World Bank, IFC, who are also participating in the workshop today. Germany, as well as the EU, as leading partners in the sustainable development and green credit, and provide the support to developing countries, including Vietnam, in the green credit and green bond. The EU has issued the EU taxonomy in 2020, and expectedly will issue the standard of the green bond in 2022 with the 2 main pillars that's in line with the green taxonomy of EU and in line with the third-party assessment. EU also has a mass-scale issuance program of green bond up to 200 to 25 billion euro in order to finance green programs. As well as green taxonomy's development, GIZ and ISPONRE experts review beside the green classification and standard of green bond of the EU and also CBI, and a wide range of countries that are close to Vietnam, China, Mongolia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, and other ASEAN countries like Japan. We have reviewed hundreds of legal documents regulating the specification of Vietnam. On that basis, the team of experts come up with a proposal of one green classification catalog that is in line with compatible with the common practice and Vietnamese standard. To follow on, Dr. Nguyễn Phước Nam, Lại Văn Mạnh will give you a detailed presentation on these contents. And within this morning and also this afternoon, we like to emphasize on very extremely 4 components that are code introduced by GIZ and ISPONRE in the green taxonomy. Number 1, classify in accordance with the purpose of environmental protection law issued in 2014 for the green credit and issuance of green credits, similar to the EU standard and ASEAN standards. Number 2, we have developed the classification criteria and threshold on the basis of the regulation, technical specification in reference to the international standards and EU. That is enormous steps as compared to the list of the green project previously announced by the State Bank of Vietnam and the MONRE. Such criteria as practice suitable with the advanced classification of the world and the countries. And number 3, we come up with the G6. That's in accordance with the decision 24/7 the Prime Minister issued in 2018, similar to the EU and the ASEAN's EU and both economic classification based on ASIC classification principle of the UN that enable us to make a statistic and create report by the different economic sectors of Vietnam. Number 4, introduce non-hazardous list similar to the green classification of the world international standards to meet the goal setting of environmental protection to this date. This above mentioned green classification category has been undergone 3 times of review and commented by the bank sectors. The roundtable discussion today is a big opportunity for us to receive the comments and inputs for the Prime Minister to make decision on the draft, and especially important is inputs from the financial institution, banks, investors, market regulators, and credit bond institution are those who will apply this environmental protection criteria in this green taxonomy. Once again, I would like to wish roundtable discussion great success and wish all of you the best of health. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remark, Dr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải. And next on the agenda, we'll have Mr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải from Mr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải from GIZ. And Mr. Mai Thế Hoài from ISFRONT will be the chairperson of the workshop. Thank you very much for the opening remark by Dr. Nguyễn Thanh Hải. And now we want to invite to the stage the first speaker to give the report on the draft decision by the Prime Minister on the regulation for environmental criteria to verify a project financed by green bonds and green credits by Dr. Mạc. I would like to speak on behalf of the edit team for the draft of the draft decision by the Prime Minister. On behalf of the edit team, I would like to thank the delegates and distinctive guests for being here in this workshop, and also for your contribution, online and offline participants. This is a new assessment and the first implementation in Vietnam. So the edit team is very thankful for the support from GIZ and other international organizations, the World Bank and IFC, for supporting the institute and the edit team so far. Let me do an overview about the draft decision and the criteria, environmental criteria for projects financed by green credits and green bonds. As Mr. Hải mentioned earlier, in the stage where we received that, we already having the initiatives and ideas for drafting the decision. However, there are changes. In my presentation, I focus on the key points, the legal framework for the decision, the need of issuing green taxonomic catalog, the comments on the draft decision, and the policies for green bonds issuance. And Dr. Hai will give you more details on that part. The first section is the focus on legal framework. And as Dr. Hai and Dr. Doan mentioned, in the current context, the promotion of socialization of environmental protection is receiving more and more attention. We have the decree number 41 playing the foundation for environmental protection. The development of green bonds and green credits guidelines also send us the message of the direction forward, balancing the environmental protection and economic development. It's gonna be it's gonna be a topic that receives a lot of attention from the commercial banks and other organizations. In the world, there are many countries who are putting effort into promoting the issuance of green bonds and green credits through their regulations. Countries and regions in the world that are issuing green bonds, such as the EU, Kazakhstan, and we have researched these case studies to give recommendation for the development of regulation in Vietnam, and also the policies by the World Bank and IFCs are also referred to. These are the information that we have included in our research. We also consulted the Ministry of Finance and the State Bank of Vietnam to see that the policies for issuance of bonds and credit in Vietnam is quite roughly. However, this is still a lack of green taxonomy catalogs to tell issuers how to select green projects and projects that can be financed through the green credits. So we recommended the government to build a green taxonomy catalog. However, when we come to the environmental protection law, there is a question to see if we should include it in the law or should it be a separate legal document, because there are going to be many updates to have the taxonomy catalog relevant to the general context and also the legal framework. If it is included in the environmental protection law, the flexibility will be reduced. So we want to address the needs of issuing a green taxonomy catalog in the context of Vietnam. These are the foundation for the development of the green taxonomy. Article number 149 of the environmental protection law. There is one important detail that's explaining green credits that are issued for the following projects that invest in increasing natural resource efficiency, climate change response, waste management, and a number of other projects. Article number 150, clause 2 of the Environmental Protection Law 2020 also lists a number of criteria that projects needs to be qualified, needs to own to qualify as a green project, such as the environmental protection objectives, efficiency in the water management, and also climate change response, and a number of other criteria that are excluded in the list. We discussed these criteria, are they the name of the projects or are they the benefits provided by the projects? From our experience, the investment projects in Vietnam are classified based on the industries such as agriculture, energy, and other industries. So these are understood as the benefits provided by the projects. If that's the case, then we need details, guidelines on how to identify such benefits in the project. Article number 154 explaining the projects that are financed green credits, credit grid number 8, have listed a list of criteria to identify these projects and also the role and responsibility of MONRE on cooperating with other branches and other agencies on building the criteria to identify projects that can be financed by green credits and green bonds. These are the foundation for developing the green taxonomy catalog. The verification of such projects under the requirements of the project owners who wish to receive the intensive of green credits and green bonds. We are very open to the commercial banks and the financial institutes and also investors. We want to hear your opinion on how to develop the taxonomy in a way that are relevant to your current situation and also the global context. Objectives of the issuance. I want to go quickly through this. It is in order to create a clear and integrity of the green taxonomy application and also a tool to support the banks and investors in order to encourage them to finance projects that have environmental protection benefits. We have high expectation and ambition for this objective. Another objective of the green taxonomy is to provide better governance, management, and monitoring of the transition, the economic transition from a brown to green economy. Principles and requirements for the development of the taxonomy. These are only the guiding principles. We expect that experts can give us your opinion in order to improve these principles. First, it needs to be legal and complies to the legal framework, legal documents. So the taxonomies will be compliant to the law of environmental protection, security law, investment law, statistics law. We need to achieve a uniform and harmony of the other legal documents. Second, it is the historical nature of the taxonomy. The edit team is quite hesitant when it comes to the requirements by the government's office. The taxonomy should be simple and understood easily by the general public and help them on how to identify green and brown projects. And we need to achieve simplification of guiding document systems. If it is too complicated, it makes it more difficult for the financial institutions in application. Scientific, open, and ensure the integrity to the general public. When we apply a system of taxonomies and criteria, it is one part of the system, so it need to be harmonized with all the documents, identifying the trail and green projects. If there is no background of such documents, we need to rely on and follow the international standard in building the green taxonomy. From 2020, from the early 2022 until now, we received from GIZ experts since 2020. So it has been 2 years working together. In EU, they completed the process within 3 years. So we expect that we can have the same timeline. After 2 years working together with the GIZ, we achieved a draft taxonomy, and this workshop is to listen to your opinions and also to collect your comments in order to submit to the Prime Minister. That is the expected next steps. Some contents of the environmental criteria regulation. There are articles beside by the Prime Minister. We focus on the content and also one appendix for a green taxonomy, and also on the forms and templates on how to identify projects that can be financed by green credit. Article number 1 is the scope of governance. This is applicable for projects that can be financed by green bonds and green credits, and a list of criteria to qualify such projects. Article number 2 is the objects. There are 4 groups of objects. The issuers that are individual and organizations. Second, the issuers of bonds on the market who want to get green credits. And number 3 is the organization issuers who are domestic and global institutes. And number 4 are governmental agencies. We have also included about 20 terms that are used in the green taxonomy. The list is quite long, so please refer to the documents for more details. The contents of the regulation, the environmental criteria. Looking into the criteria, you can also find more details in the appendix. Environmental criteria includes the screening criteria, the threshold, to tell you which threshold identify a project as brown or green project, and also the harmful impacts, significance of the project. Investment projects that invest in renewable energy, besides reducing GHG emission and use clean energy. There are also other benefits, but there are also other harmful impacts on the water or soil pollution. So there should be other binding criteria to balance the final benefits of the projects. We also have other thresholds and regulation. The project needs to be compliant to the local regulation on other aspects. The GDM and environmental regulation in on other related documents by the government. Green taxonomy appendix is included in this publication. The Environmental Ministry should also issue a detailed guideline for projects of special cases. If a project is easily to be identified as the green umbrella project, the detailed guidelines is not necessary, but there are different projects that need more guidelines for verification, and there should be a manual for such a process. The consent number 6 is a very important one, assigning by the Prime Minister of this drafting process, and we have two recommendations. The recommendations, the option number 1, we expect to listen to the feedbacks from commercial banks and investors. The option number 1, there will be no governmental verification. The market actors, including commercial banks, investors, financial institutions, can verify or hire a qualified third party to do the verification. If we choose this option, there will be two articles that are applicable. The governmental agency and the second case, the commercial banks and financial institutions and investors of green bonds can use the taxonomy and perform the verification process themselves. Option number 2 is where we have government verification. Article number 6 refers to only to the option number 1, but in the option number 2, we will also have to apply article number 7, where we perform the project verification based on a number of regulations in other legal documents, such as the issuance of environmental license and permission, and a number of other regulations of the related laws and documents. It is clear that we have a list of regulations to follow. The verification by governmental agencies or the issuance of environmental license. The specialized agencies will also involve the granting of DGM and environmental permissions, and how would this process should be done. We also have a workshop for that matter, and also it will relate to environmental management. The projects that are require environmental license will be a part of this process, and also detailed requirements for the set of documents that needs to be included. So if we go with option number 2, there will be more steps and more requirements to follow. The project owner can join and start from the DTM granting process, or after they receive environmental license. The option number 2 includes all the steps that I've just mentioned. This is a project that does not perform the assessment of environmental impact, and they can apply for the verification. However, this option will increase the legal procedure steps and the costs for the project. It is our expectation to receive your feedback on these two options. There are more steps for legal procedure and assessment that the option number 2 needs to follow. We have some regulation on the timeline for verification, included option number 2, where we have governmental verification and the involvement of the qualification bodies, and the assessment of roles and responsibilities to governmental agencies, to the state bank and other organizations for the implementation and the training related to the Green Taxonomy Catalog. This is the key content of the Prime Minister decision on the issuance of Green Taxonomy implementation and verification of projects. The structure of the taxonomy, Green Taxonomy, I would save this part from Dr. Nguyễn Phương Nam's presentation for more details and how to identify the threshold for green projects and the cooperation between the two organizations. Dr. Nam will give you more details on this section. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm speaking on behalf of the edit team to ask for your feedbacks and opinion in order to improve and to finalize the best version of the Green Taxonomy Catalog. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation of Dr. Lại Văn Mạnh. To continue, I'd like to formally introduce Mr. Nguyễn Phương Nam to give his presentation on his report on the draft of the Green Taxonomy for project finance through a green credit and green bond. First of all, thank you, organizing committee, for giving me an opportunity to give the presentation this morning. My name is Nam. I'm the lead consultant of GIZ. That includes a team of 5 experts, Dr. Phong from the environmental department, Dr. Dom, deputy head of environmental department, Ms. Lien from ODA division of the State Bank of Islam. I'm speaking on behalf of the group of 5 experts to give you a presentation on the draft of the Prime Minister's decision. As you might know, that Dr. Thai and Dr. Tuan have shared with you a couple of minutes ago. The working team has been working on this project for nearly 2 years, starting from 2020. We built on the international experiences and applying the technical expertise and knowledge in order to develop the annex number 1 in the decision of Prime Minister. Looking at the decision, you can see why the annex is so long, from 113 to 116. When the Prime Minister issued that stay intact as the same as we proposed. Now is in consultation phase. We need to introduce in the full version so that the readers can have a good idea of the content. So the first consultation was done in Hanoi, and today in Ho Chi Minh City. In Ho Chi Minh City, we are lucky to have participation from the different partners from the banking and financial institutions. My presentation would last about 30 minutes. Some of my preparatory content has been somehow touched upon by Dr. Mike and other speakers. So let me skip these points. And for details information, you can, if you want to have a look at the documents that we have sent to you. My presentation comprises of 4 parts. Some parts I would go through that very quickly because it's already touched upon by other speakers. So let me review a little bit about the national background that somehow touched upon by Mr. Mike already. And the second one is overall international experience. In the draft for Prime Minister decision that's not included, but this actually is very important. Why Vietnam come up with this standard, or we have to based on the international standard. If we invented that, then is as more advanced or backward. The third one is methodology we utilize. Based on this methodology, we come up with so far the best catalog for Vietnam according to the opinion of IFC, CBI, and many European organizations. Many of them contributed opinion after 3 rounds of consultation with international experts and 60 Vietnamese experts. So that is the third part of my presentation, and the most important content is the fourth part. This is the content of the green classification, the list of the different type of project and screening criteria and indicators and threshold and indicators. To make it not too intense for you, first of all, in the finance and banking sector, we have a message. Vietnam is pretty developed, and we enjoying some achievement. Turning Vietnam from a low-income country to an average-income country. So all the people at large, we striving for well-developed economy, but ensuring the green economy. Poor family cannot enjoy tasty food without money. So green growth entails a huge amount of finance in the long run. So in order for Vietnam to grow more sustainably, that's not going beyond the goal of green growth. Let's review some countries. The environmental protection law issued in 2020 and taking effect since 1st of January 2022. Starting, we have the issuance of Decree 08 to implement the law on environmental protection. So development of green taxonomy, green credit and bond is part of that as a legal foundation for making the decision of the Prime Minister. And some other relevant legal documents that's already in place. I, together with GIZ and State Bank, to co-develop green catalog. 2012 CBI. They also started from 2013. Vietnam start approaching this since 2015. It's not too late as compared to other countries in the world. But we step by step learn and inherit the experiences from developing countries. They even issued before us in 2015. They issued, but they grow very quickly. But there's some pros, but the cons is that may raise some social economic implication and consequences. So Vietnam started looking into that since 2015. The first issuance from the State Bank, it just gave a status the list of the green project. In 2017, the official documents 1950 required all the banks have to make a statistical list of green project, green credit. However, that's not officialized, only limited to the credit sector of the bank. So that can be used as a foundation that we inherit from that. I'm lucky to be one of the experts to pursue this project since 2015. And apart from that, there's other documents like public investment classification and climate change. This is in 2018 of the Ministry of Planning Investment that touched on a few items of investment gearing towards green economy and adapting climate change, greenhouse effect. And with the support of Monterey and IFC, we have a reference list of environmental criteria issued in 2019. They are all of the work that we, the GIZ working team and the ISPONRES experts have jointly reviewed carefully and inherit good things. That's very valuable documents. Those are suitable with the current status in Vietnam. And in Europe, they have economic classification system based on assets. This is very easy for them to implement. However, Vietnam, we don't have that yet, and Vietnam learned the experience from developed countries. Without that, how can we do? We cannot wait for too long. That's something that I look into the international experience. We start in that journey since 2015. What have countries in the world been doing? We learn a lot of experience from them. We learning by doing, and experience from countries, other countries very different from Vietnam. We cannot learn from a too well-developed country in Europe. They have a project of billions of euro for 5 years. We can also not learn from Mongolia. The short list of only 15 or 20 pages, including 15 or 20 bullet points, that include no threshold and criteria. There's no limit at all. So we cannot learn that way. Or we should not only like EU focus on the mitigation of greenhouse effect emission, not pay that attention to climate change, just like China and some other developing countries. Without availability of iron, aluminum, how can we create a photovoltaic panels or batteries, solar panels? So the developed countries, they have sufficient backgrounds, finance, technologies, so make it much easier for credit green economy development. So we focus a lot on the green taxonomy catalog of Europe and of China. China has two versions. The first version was pretty rudimentary, but the second version in 2021 is more detailed and extremely complex. And behind that, that's also the guiding documents of specification. In Vietnam, we have the Vietnam standards, but here in us, the green that includes only a few contents that miss almost others. So we need to inherit what Vietnam have available and learn from the developing countries that share similarity. We cannot impose strict standards of Europe. If we use that, limit Vietnam from refrain Vietnam from developing, as Mr. Mike said, that we learn from experience. As introduced from IFC, we learn from Bangladesh, Colombia, Malaysia, and some commercial banks in Vietnam as their internal manuals. We also refer to that. Let me go through this part very quickly. Each document that consists of 507 pages within a short limit time of the workshop. I just can introduce some key contents. All of the documents are put online. If you are interested in whatever, you can refer to more details documents. As Mr. Hayes, I said, the CBI is organizing climate initiating organization that's not governmental, that's neutral. They're just based on the scientific evidence without being influenced by any country that's located in the United Kingdom. The CEO is Mr. Sin. Some of you may have already met him. He's not only a greatly passionate person in science, also has deep knowledge of development. He's the person who directly contribute opinion into the draft of Vietnam, and he said that no countries like Vietnam. We visit that several times. Some countries just after 2 rounds of consultation that's done, but Vietnam after many revisions, we're very keen on learning and improving. So the key principle of the green taxonomy, the key content is to come up with to be on the same page with on the terminology between scientists, regulators, and businesses. for environmental terms, maybe the bankers not interested. But if we talk about green credit and more just not mentioning anything about environmental criteria, we will be accused as abusing the policy of the government to for your own benefit without protecting the environment. But this is a kind of terms for in the case of there's a conflict of reason. We can based on that in order to mediate them. One Mr. Mike said that the article 6 or 7, if we let the market freely at the market disposition, that would be good, but cause a lot of environmental consequences in the implication. It would be very difficult for the state regulatory to agency to address that. So, this afternoon, Andre and GIZ really very keen on hearing from you so that we can unite, agree on the terms, because each of us have our own expertise. So we need to agree on common terms. So the Andres were very keen on hearing all from you. Previously, mostly all professor and scientists put in their ideas, and today we
nước như Mông Cổ hay Bangladesh hoặc là Colombia, Malaysia thì đấy là những cái nét về những cái kinh nghiệm quốc tế. Tôi cũng không đi quá, thậm chí là danh mục mà tín dụng xanh của bên VPBank chúng tôi cũng tìm hiểu xem các anh chị ta đã có bài trình bày của VPBank, nhưng mà chúng tôi cũng đã tìm hiểu rà soát. Nó mang tính sổ tay nội bộ thôi, nhưng mà nó cũng rất là thú vị, vì những cái nào mà dễ thì pháp luật không cấm những cái gì mà
types of project. One type of project is 100 sub-project, or one project has 100 components or items. So the classification into 8 types of project and 82 types of project. Remember, that's types of project. It's not project. The project in detail that have the detailed basic code, but if this is a career code that may comprises of more than 100 component project. In Vietnam, basis code that comprises of more than 10,000 types of project. You cannot say that 82 types cover everything, but that cover basically almost everything. Let's talk about methodology. Mr. Mike touch up on some of the contents. Let me go through that quickly. The general principle and goals, as Mr. Mike shared already. For example, classification of the project with the benefit and some screening criteria, etc. In nature. That is a tool for adjusting the international and domestic flow of capital to ensure the green growth and environmental sustainability development. Some principle based on Article 149, 150, the law on environmental protection, CBI green classification, or we inherit from the development agency or what that have available in Vietnam. So let me go through that quickly at the same time. Some principle why we mentioned the basic code, as you know, that the core banking system based on this basic or ASIC coding system, or we are trying to approach international standard. If we invented a new code that's not closely linked to Vietnamese economy, that would create a burden for the banking sector and many other sectors. So that is a very important thing. How to integrate that into the existing system of the banks, very important. And we classify the types of project relatively based on the CBIs. But there's no wrong or right classification according to CBI and the screening criteria, how much it can cover. Another is a screening criteria to avoid businesses abuse our policies. So the threshold, we apply the best practice of Vietnam in reference to the practice of US, Europe, and Kazakhstan. We take the average value, for example, the intensity of the effluence and gas emission. We can learn from Kazakhstan. No need to be too strict as in Europe. The possibility that power plants in the Western countries, they have a very good regulatory system. In Vietnam, when the solar system not stabilized, we have to run the coal-based plants in order to make sure we have continual supply of power. So our threshold is not as strict as in Europe, but not too high, unrealistic, so that we can always run the coal as a base load together with the solar power. That is some principle in the screening criteria. Some of the principle not causing significant harm, as Dr. Mike mentioned, some basic principle in the roundtable discussion. Dr. Phong will discuss more in depth why the content of that have a range of digital numbers that make other people not able to understand. But in statistical figures of bank is very important for them to integrate into the core banking database. So let me not talk too much about that. Let me just touch up on the most important part is number 4. How the other countries are doing and how Vietnam is doing, which has reviewed the list of items. Our presentation focuses on the Annex 1, ranging from with the Article 1 to 8, and also the Annex 2, even though there's few deletions, but that's very much related. So let's revisit. That is a very short list. You understand, for CBI is something that's neutral and Mongolia is considered as a developing country like Vietnam. China is pretty typical, similar to Vietnam. What are the similarity? What are the differences? And in CBI, they divide into 8. Why? There's a number 8 here. 8 covers all the activities operation of one economy. That is to say, nothing exists outside of these 8 areas. It doesn't mean that 8 is standardized. For example, China has 6 only, but that covers 202 types of projects, whereas CBI only have 17. EU has 8 based on NASDAQ codes. Why? Number 1 is a forest, not energy. So that's just have the readers know that we are interested in this kind of project. So we refer to EU as number 1, but the forest in CBI just is for land and soil utilization. In Vietnam, similarly, we have 8. We closely cling to CBI's framework, not because CBI is the international standards we need to follow. We can also follow the Europe basic. Vietnam also apply Europe the basic. Emphasis are agriculture or forest, much as related to the professional code. The ordinal numbers is not the priority number. Let's just make a list of the different projects here. So you can envisage Vietnam applying the best practice of the world and of countries. The order may be different. For example, Mongolia separate between the renewable energy and less polluted energy fuel. Whether Vietnam should separate them? No, we merge into one, or transportation, we merge into one. But some other countries, they separate. For example, China, they, let me go into details later. China merges into the kind of clean energy technology. We based on the principle, not omitting, but also make sure that that's somehow generalized, not going into too much details. Otherwise, just like China, the more we go in, the more complex it is. At the beginning, it seems to be simple and easy, but the more we do that, we find it more complicated. That's something that Vietnam need to learn from that. So that's for you to understand why the next one of the decision, make a list from the 13 to 106. If some people lose patience reading through all the pages, you do not understand where your project is located. So that is just a list for your reference. Let me go into detail. CBI 8 fields and 44 types of project. Why we have different colors here? Green is something that we agree. As Mr. Hai said that in 2022, we will use that as standards to follow green development. What about the yellow colors? Yellow colors means still in transition process for them. For example, airplanes still emitting pollution. And so they are transiting into green, but they apply more stricter criteria for the greens. The verification process and due diligence would be simpler, but the yellow ones more difficult, and banks and lenders must study that more thoroughly. What about the white color? Cement production, iron production. Many people may complain that why it's not creating emission and pollution. The answer is yes, that is still included here, so that we consider. So the green list doesn't mean that all projects here are green, and something not included here doesn't mean that it's not green, but they're not studied, not attended properly, or with our advancement of technology to verify that. So CBI came up with this such very transparent concept here and definition. You can see that there are 44 types of projects, and with the equivalent set of criteria. And next, something more complicated available in Europe. You can see that there's no yellow areas. Only green, and something is still considering it's not available. They inherit from NASE based on economy based on asset, and some countries like Mongolia based on the existing technology, but Europe based on the asset. No matter what we do, we have to rely on the available asset. For example, the hydrogen production, say in 2020, we have looked into that when the European energy crisis not happened. No nuclear energy crisis, but later on that's happened in Europe. So the so-called that is a transition time. They accept that, and they have 70-40 groups of projects. Out of the 70 groups of projects, that includes thousands of projects. Without that, our terms we use here will not be agreed on. So without knowing in which group we can classify them. For example, the power. Some countries have the rooftop solar power, and Vietnam has solar farms. But Europe, they have a convergence solar power. Vietnam encouraged to pursue that, but the economic benefit is not huge. So the ability to invest into that is not very much. And Vietnam, we encourage real estate development, so we very much interested into that. Europe, they refurbish, renovate buildings, so they very much pay attention to energy efficiency. So they based on asset, Vietnam based on construction technology, and so depending on what you rely on, the criteria may be different. We do not have enough time to go into too much detail. I just want to systemize for your better understanding. Some countries that are worthy to refer to as Mongolia, even though that's very simple, but that generate a kind of initial basis. And Vietnam has a roadmap in 5 or 10 years. We need to improve that. We should not be too perfectionist. We can never generate that, but we will not trade off the environment for economic development, but without any threshold to prevent the hazards from happening, that would not be acceptable. In Mongolia, they introduced 59 and here classified according to technologies by wind power, hydropower, solar power. That's different from Europe, or the less polluted fuel. That's biomass, gas, and oil. But in Europe, they don't have that. Or the energy from the waste, including liquefied gas and other fuel, as long as that can have the safe energy that can be included into the green transitional projects. In Mongolia has no threshold and criteria. You can take note. All of these documents are available online. You can Google Mongolia taxonomy. I'm also very transparent. Everything we inherit and learn from others, we can introduce to you. From China here, as I guess is the most updated version in 2020, issued in 2021, that covers 6 areas and that covers 202 projects. Since 2015, there's about 50 or 60, and after 2020, they issued 222. And we, for eco and environment, there's only 2 types of projects, as eco agriculture and eco protection. Actually, there's 26 subcategories in my presentation. You can see that what are the subcategories, number 1 to 3. Only reviewing where to classify our project in which group, as is require a lot of technical expertise. Not talking about not to mention about the financial banking terms in order to conclude where our project should be classified. So we refrain ourselves from going into subcategories. That would make it very difficult for different for companies. China is also very good. That's worthy to learn. This is a climate change adaptation project. In Europe, they do not include that. So we are developing countries. We need to learn a lot from that in order to adapt to climate change. normally as a public investment, we very difficult to include the private investment. We encourage them in order to engage them into dike and sea dike construction. That's not bring about many economic benefits. That's something that we learn a lot from China. So you can learn from this their qualitative, not quantitative criteria in order to protect the communities. To quantify, qualify, that's very difficult. But according to European assets, we can easily to quantify, but very difficult to qualify. So that's why in Vietnam some items very qualitative and whereas the other quantitative. So we have to accept that because it's too difficult. CPI has not included for us to learn, but China already included that for us to learn. So why in the next one, some of them qualitative, the other quantitative? Simply that they're not available. We can learn from China. That is something that I would like to explain to you in the next one. Why some of them impossible to quantify, only qualify at least, or we can quantify it indirectly through the green certificates. If we ask the banks to measure the energy performance, energy use performance of one building, impossible. But if the building has a green certificate issued by Vietnam or Singapore or Europe, that would make it much easier for them to do due diligence. Otherwise, the green certificate will be withdrawn. So that's something that we introduce to have the examiners to do their work. No matter they are just normal examiners or professor, even professor has to measure during their due diligence. That's something that we inherit by referring to a lot of criteria. In Europe, they have the emission standard for each building, but we do not have that available here, even though the criteria 09 of Ministry of Construction already introduced that. So we really need to conform to the existing legal documents of the government, but needs to be practical, not to create any technical barriers or the financial, administrative barriers, so that they cannot take a loan, take loans from the banks. That is some of the criteria that cannot be set in details in the decision of Prime Minister. So the consultation workshop today, at the same time we consult with you, at the same time explaining, interpreting some terms for your reference. So let's get back here. There's the next one of Vietnam that consists of nearly 100 pages. If anyone have limited time, you can read through this one to have an overall picture of that. Vietnam has 80 areas with 82 types of projects. Some of them can be categorized. At the beginning, we do not want to create too many subcategories that would make it difficult for us to follow. But in the spirit, we want to combine Vietnam best somewhat to China, not really, or similar to Europe, not really. But 82 types of project in the future. If CBI recommended some more, we need to also update that. It's not stay unchanged forever as 82 types of project, but we need to make sure that they will have an economic professional code. After reviewing, after 82, there's 3 of them not available in the Visit Vietnam. Most of the others are already available, not in details, but at the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. Mr. Phong can explain why they have or not have in later on. That is our job of the future, but once we are in the project, we need to have a further vision. We make statistical figures in order to just to extract some data available in the past. Later on, if the MPI and the General Department, Statistical General Department can benefit from that and have some data to report to the Prime Minister regarding the macroeconomic issues. And Vietnam has 2 transitional projects, that is a cement and iron and steel production. So why they are in the list? If some people may complain that that's very harmful to the environment, we need to disqualify and take it out. But actually, it's still in transition. However, Vietnam has 10 areas that emit a lot of pollution. We picked 2 of them that can be verified. But many other sectors like fertilizer production, out of the 10 sectors, we plan to include them, but not at that point in time. Because that contribute a significant part of, to the economic development, such as Formosa and Hoa Phat. But if we prevent the credit flow, they would complain that we are discriminating them. So the drafting team really considered to include into 2 types. Actually, in reality, there are up to 10 types. So gradually, in the Prime Minister decision, we cannot explain that why it's not 2, why it's 2, not 10. Some of them we divide by technology and types of project. We cannot based on the asset. We have to based on the technology. Transportation in Europe and CBI, they based on different types of vehicles. For example, waterway, airway, and railway. We rely on the procurement of vehicle. Vehicles can be electricity run vehicle or hybrid vehicle, or transportation of commodities, cargoes, and passengers. We follow this group. There's no right or wrong. It's just simply the classification. And each categories there's several items. Many projects they cannot be completely green, but there are a few of them green. So we open opportunity wherever there's green, we can bring access to loan for them. Sometimes that occupy only 1% of the total. So let's follow the normal routine, not necessarily always have to be fallen into green category. So that's something in Vietnam. I also not avoid going too deeply into that. Just an idea for you to read to understand. The next one is something for your information. In the next one included 7 columns. Number first column is ordinal number, and the second is name project. That might be the name of one big project that may consist of the green items. And the third column is the key environmental goals according. That has many different goals, but at least there's some primary goals. If we include all the 9 or 10 goals, that would make it difficult for the examiners to do diligence. So with 10 criteria, that would make examination process validation process very complicated. So one of the goals are met can be considered as green. If the threshold and criteria we follow, they're not recommended by the world. We just need to pursue one goal and ensure that that goal achieve green. If that's 100% green, we should have introduced 10 criteria, maybe no more than 3 projects out of some 1,000 projects that will be approved. And so that is the meaning of the green taxonomy. And we classify, and if the project is green, the criteria is pretty easy. But the green transitioning project, Montreux should disseminate clear guidance to some areas such as cement production. So, but however, that may be associated with big consequences. So Vietnam needs to be very precautious. If the social media may not understand, they may say that Vietnam is advocating for something is not green. So we are technical people, and helping out the policy makers, we need to explain thoroughly why today the guidance from Montreux we have not done. Actually, we have done that, and we have handed the guiding documents to the Montreux. It's not true that after having done that, we embark on doing others. We just consider which legal documents is most suitable. I have nearly 5 minutes more, so let me just touch up on this point for you to understand, help you understand, read and understand. Next one. So whether the Prime Minister decision includes the 7 columns, the answer is no. But for consultation purpose, we introduce the 7 columns. The first column is from 1 to 82. It's not the order priority. And it's not necessarily that we include all the 80 items here. Maybe only 20 included, but the other 62 we do not worry why we cannot take loan in this area. The second one is a name solar power depending on the capacity and type of project, rooftop or convergence solar power. The code, according to statistical system in Vietnam, there's 5. Why it's different? Mr. Phong will explain further in the afternoon. With this, that can be linked to core banking system. The benefit is one of the 10 benefits according to us, the CBI experts. According to assessment of the domestic experts, probably that's bring about the primary benefits. We introduced that into the screening criteria and threshold of 1, 2, 3, 4, and the threshold and criteria differ from different projects. For example, emission intensity of 100 per kg in kilowatt power. This threshold, actually, the wind and solar power has no emission. But however, why still have that threshold? Just in case the power outage, we still have a standby power generation system. If the threshold is 0, just like Europe, that means in Vietnam we are not allowing the co-running pattern for generating power. If the shut down the wind farm and the solar power has no sunlight, we need to run them as a base load. But we still have the threshold 100 or 250 or 430. 13 is linked to some technical requirement. But we do not extract where we get that from Europe, Kazakhstan. In the legally normative documents, we cannot explain that. But for your information, so that the bankers and the lenders can calculate on their own, so that they understand. No need to do due diligence. But if they have DO run power generation system, we need to pay due attention to that. After giving loan to that, the solar power project, in reality they run all by coal. So the fraudulent action will be unveiled at that time. So all of these are the key documents. Apart from that, there's many other documents in relation to energy and draft electric power master plan number 8. There are many things, decisive factors like capacity, co-running, and we have not promulgated yet, but we refer to that so that you have an idea of the screening criteria. Probably in the final decision, we will not include the column 7 but in consultation workshop, we need to introduce you so that you do not have to spend time on searching for that. That may be available already in these documents. That is something to make sure that we complying and not going contrary to the existing documents. Given the time limitation, in the afternoon we'll discuss further. But just for your brief understanding, basic coding is an inheritance from the Statistical General Department. Luckily, we have Mr. Phong from the Environmental Statistics General Department who give a lot of input. CBI highly appreciate Vietnam's effort. We have anticipated what may happen in the future to tackle that right from the beginning. Other developing countries like Mongolia, Malaysia, they do not have that. To take it out is very easy, but including that may bring value in the future. So we take the liberty of including that, even though it's still controversial, Mr. Phong, that many things that affect the economies and anything requires in-depth knowledge in economic sector. So I really wish you bear with us. We really encourage us to include that, but excluding that is easy, but it would be no good for the future. So that is something just for your better information. That is a proportion of the green credit. The figure taken from the State Bank. So over the past time, the credit contribution distributed in Vietnam, some sectors that's easy to be commercialized, such as green agriculture or renewable energy or the water management, 14%. They occupy a huge proportion. But in the meantime, we have other sectors such as transportation or electric vehicles that are eligible to green credit, or if the rooftop solar power in hotel or buildings, the proportion of green loan can be increased. So the international organization always ask the domestic commercial banks and Precision to conform to that green requirement, and greenhouse emissions occupying more than 90% in the manufacturing industry or energy production. There's the areas that emit huge, that's a very huge emission. And the world also looking seriously into that in order to adjust the credit line. Last but not least, the environmental criteria is very lengthy. It is one of the 10 environmental benefits that's not included into the Prime Minister decision. The environmental goals you can change in the Form 02 of the Prime Minister's decision. There's a template for you to fill out the criteria. We cannot include that into the Prime Minister decision, but include here in order to ensure the consistency from the Annex 1 to Annex 2. And all of these benefits will be listed into the Annex 1. For the 10 goals will be included in Annex 2. That is something that I would like to introduce for your reflection. But once you have criteria, there will be threshold. There's no limitation, but so that you know that in order to invest into a solar power project, the investment owner must be aware of the master plan. But we cannot list that in details here. Maybe that may go up to some dozen pages for this. It's just impossible, make it impossible. In order to know that, you need to refer to the energy master plans in order to check if you're conforming to law or not. There are many information you may want to refer to that. That is all of my presentation. And I think that's already pretty lengthy. So given the time limitation, I have gone over 5 minutes for the schedule already. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Nam, for your presentation. And let me kindly request the speakers after the tea break to try to conform to the time allocated to you. This morning we have many speakers, so please pay due attention to your time of your presentation. Before tea break, allow me, on behalf of Mr. Tuan, I would like to have 3 points I'd like to draw your attention. Number one, we introduce the link of the documents on the chat box. Just need to press on the link so that you can download all the documents, and also the submission to the Prime Minister, the updated draft of the Prime Minister decision also uploaded. And especially for the foreign experts, you may want to refer to the English version. We have the draft translated into English. That's the first attention. First point I would like to draw your attention. The second point, just like the comments of Deputy Director Mai Văn Toàn, we are very keen on collecting all of your inputs, comments, both the online participants and the participants who are present here in person. We have sent to you some form for you to fill out your comments, so as we can take all of your inputs out of the nearly 20 presentation. We are also very keen on learning your opinions and inputs, as we know that we come from all the financial, banking, and investment sectors with rich experience, who will be also subject to the Prime Minister decision as well. Please spend your time to fill out the form, and by the end of the conference today, send it back to the organizing committee. Number 3, to save time, we save the question and answer in a session. But if you have any pressing question, write on the chat box, send back to the organizing committee, so as in the roundtable discussion between experts, we arrange 2 groups of panelists as well as key members of the drafting teams to fly into Ho Chi Minh City. So that this afternoon we will have a good accountability and question and answer. After tea break, if you have any questions, you are kindly requested to write it in the chat box or write on a piece of paper and send back to the organizing committee. Thank you very much. I wonder, Mr. Wing, you would like to announce about the group photo session. Mr. Wing, please.
Before the tea break, I'd like to invite all of you to the stage to have a group photo. And online participants, please turn on your camera so we can also capture your photo as well. Please hurry up, and we can have a group photo to remember the consultation workshop together.
Đúng rồi. Xin mời tất cả các đại biểu ạ. Vâng, ta khẩn trương, ta lên ta chụp ảnh chung để kỷ niệm. Vâng. Xin mời các anh chị. Vâng, ta khẩn trương tí. Đặc biệt là ưu tiên các chị đứng phía trước đấy ạ. Vâng. Các anh cao thì đứng phía sau. Mời các chị. Vâng. Xin cảm ơn các anh chị và ta mời các anh chị nghỉ giải lao 15 phút ạ. Vâng. 10 rưỡi ta quay lại ạ. Vâng.
phần. Thì thứ nhất là về khung khổ pháp lý, thứ hai là về chúng tôi nhìn nhận trên cái khía cạnh của chúng tôi là tại sao chúng ta lại phải ban hành cái danh mục phân loại xanh này. Thứ ba là chúng tôi sẽ có một số ý kiến tham gia với cái dự thảo quyết định. Thứ tư là tôi sẽ trình bày cung cấp thêm thông tin về cái chính sách khuyến khích phát triển cái thị trường trái phiếu xanh trong thời gian tới. Và thứ năm là cái phát triển cái kế hoạch phát triển. Thế về khung khổ pháp lý thì như các anh các chị cũng đã thấy trong cái phần trình bày của các chuyên gia của GIZ cũng như
the GIZ experts and Monterey experts that we have been working with them on the environmental protection law. There is a regulation on green bonds and green taxonomy. To put it briefly, green bonds are issued for projects in environmental protection and environmental benefits areas. That is the big framework, and we have detailed guidelines to identify green projects and bonds that are used to finance such projects are called green bonds. Some detailed regulation in finance. Basically, we have full regulation on green bonds, Article 157, Decree number 8, 2022, and Decree number 93 for public green bonds. Beside the green taxonomy that we are developing, the green bonds market regulation is basically complete. We do not have a united document, but the legal documents at different levels address this matter already. So we should wait until we have the green taxonomy, and then it is ready for implementation. Let's look at the needs for a green taxonomy. At the time when we developed environmental protection law, we cooperated closely with Monterey to incorporate regulation from the law to the decree levels. There are two models in the world. One is to issuance the green taxonomy such as based on the framework such as ICMA and Asian standards. Other countries such as EU and China, Malaysia, etc. They have their own detailed guidelines. And as I understand from the morning presentations, we are following this direction. So the guidelines and documents of details. At the law and decree levels, the responsibilities of the issuers are identified, and also process of issuance as well. But there's still a lacking of the green project validation requirements and process. So this is important, and I believe that we should push the progress faster to have a finalized versions of the taxonomy. As mentioned, the green taxonomy has fulfilled the requirements on regulation, instruction of issuance. The issuance of this green taxonomy aims at following goals. The first is to identify green projects so that the issuers can answer the question if the project they want to invest it in by green credits is a green project. From the investors' perspective, they can have a framework to identify a green project on the legal standard. We are going behind other countries so we can benefit from the experiences of other markets. As Mr. Phu Nam mentioned, we are following this direction correctly. We should be in detail when it comes to screening criteria, threshold, and indicators to fulfill the scientific requirements as well as to be relevant to the market. The comments and recommendation for the green taxonomy, we have these following comments as you can see on the slide, but I want to give some more details. We need to review and ensure that the green taxonomy is compliant to the international practices. We join the Asian Green Bond Standard, and we are building the green taxonomy for the whole Asian. So should we review to make sure our compliance with the standards and how are we applying international standards? The green taxonomy of Asia is under development, and Mr. Dũng, who is a direct participant in this process, is providing us information that the progress is coming to the final stage. So we need to review our own green taxonomy in order to make sure we fulfill the requirements of the standards. And should there be adjustment, we need to do it on time and in a manner that ensure the taxonomy is in compliance. This may be changing, but if we don't do it now, it could be more difficult in the future, and the application of the code systems statistics. Clause C, Article 8, there is a responsibility of doing the statistics, but we are at the early stages and there are many challenges. So I think we should remove this content, and the Ministry of Finance can carry out this task under the general responsibilities and submit it to the Prime Minister. If we do it immediately, it would be very difficult. We can amend the bonds and security regulation documents in the future and find a way to perform this task later on. The validation of projects, green projects, there are a number of challenges, and as Mr. Toan mentioned, the ministry does not have agreement yet. So how do we perform the validation? The validation carries an important meaning to the market. In addition to issuance of green credit encouragement, we also have supportive policies from the government. And if you want to benefit from these policies, there should be an urgency to an organization to validate your projects as a green project. So it is required to have a validation step. There are two options. You may hire a third party, an auditor, to validate your project, but we have still not had this service in the Vietnam market. So if we follow that direction, it's gonna be challenging. The second thing is that the regulation does not stipulate a process for validation. Who will be the bodies that perform the legal validation? So when I think about it, I consider option 2 recommended by Monray. It is more suitable with the current situation. We should not separate it as a validation by itself, but we should incorporate it. We should incorporate it as one step in the whole environmental process, and it would be more reasonable to be performed by the government because they are the one to give the decision of project owners who can benefit from their policies. So the option number 2 is more suitable, and I want to receive the feedbacks from other stakeholders as well to grant the market the power to perform the validation is not suitable at the moment, and businesses who do not wish to enjoy the policies from the government, where would we put, which categories would we classify them? If they fulfill all the process and standard of international organizations, will we validate them as green projects? We need to answer that question as well, because if they don't wish to enjoy the policies, the issuance of their green bonds on international standard, I think we should recognize them as green financial products as well, even though we don't grant them with the benefits related to it. However, the validation is needed, and that is another question to think about. There is also another point on the objectives of using or issuing the green bonds. There are 2 objectives. First, to serve the green bonds, and second, green credit. The green taxonomy requires a lot of effort, and it would take 100 people to develop a taxonomy. In Vietnam, we have less people. However, it is still very time and effort consuming. There should be more objectives for the use of the green taxonomy. You may refer to the EU's taxonomy, and there are a number of objectives for the use of it. First, it is obligatory usage of the taxonomy. It is required to use the green taxonomy in information disclosure for the financial and non-financial organizations. When disclose information, they are required to provide information related to the green taxonomy criteria. So that is obligatory, and there is also a voluntary usage of the green taxonomy. Businesses can use green taxonomy to develop their strategy in order to attract responsible and environmental friendly investors. They can also use the green taxonomy to invest in projects or businesses that deliver positive environmental impacts. Another usage objective is to for green labeling, and to use the criteria as classification criteria for green projects. So I think we may we may add more objectives for the usage of green taxonomy so that the green taxonomy can provide more practical benefits to the economy. There are two objectives as the regulated. It will be used to classify green projects and non-green projects. It is very beneficial because when we look into the investment list, investment project list of Vietnam, you can tell how much, what is the transition, the proportion of green projects in Vietnam over time. So there are other ways to use the green taxonomy, not only to serve the green bonds and green credit. I also want to give you more information on the incentives of green bonds. Starting from the time where we developed the environmental protection law, we know that there should be incentives. And there are a number of incentives that have been developed, and also some others are under preparation, such as the incentive for favorable prices. As according to this, issuers and lenders enjoy 50% discounts of service price for the registration, for management of registration, for transaction, and a number of other services. The green bond issuers, if they issue green bonds, they can enjoy 50% discounts of all of these services. Second, for a public investment project, it is clearly stipulated that public green bonds users will be prioritized to enjoy the public budget during annual budgeting. So this is a big incentive. Tax, we are making amendment to the personal and corporate business, corporate tax income law. It is in the personal income tax. It is planned to incorporate incentives for objectives that related to the green project as well. We are developing policies to encourage the development of this market. In the coming time, the Ministry of Finance is cooperating with Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment to develop a mechanism for green bonds. We did projects in the previous phase, and we worked with GIZ on this matter. But as under the 5-year economic and social development strategy, it is very advantageous for us to choose to select public investment projects that can be financed through green bonds. However, there is still a lack of the green taxonomy for this process. And as Mr. Phu Nam mentioned, I want to suggest that we can go back to this task and do it right now for the green public investment projects that have been approved by the National Assembly. We can apply this green taxonomy for them. We don't need to go down to a very detailed level of criteria. We can, if we can see a project, very clearly a green project, and comply with all the environmental regulation, we can issue the bonds for them, but not waiting until the end of the year. So if we can go with that direction, we can have a session with the OMF and Monterey to discuss the implementation and also the technical advice. For international and local investors, we can select green projects and implement them in a short time. As after the COVID, there are many interest and attention for the green and sustainable projects. So I wish to have a session to discuss with Mr. Nguyen and Mr. Hai on this idea. Local green bonds pilot. There are two pilots in Vũng Tàu and Ho Chi Minh City. And it is clear that in the localities, they are encouraging. And when we look into the project list, local project list, it is possible to implement option number 2, and if so, we can choose a number of projects, local projects for pilot. Actually, Ministry of Finance identify a number of resources for the support of businesses, hiring consultants, such as GCI, and the support from Ministry of Finance. It is only internal, but not. It was not validated to get the incentives from the newly issued bonds. So we have the Vietnam Bankers Association here. You may select your members and have them to work with OMF. We are ready to give support for bond issuers who want to enjoy the benefits from the new policies. That is my presentation with some recommendation. Looking into the draft decision, when I received the invitation of this consultation workshop, I was quite surprised. And when I look into the content, it is much clearer than what it was in May and April. And when I listen to Mr. Nguyen's presentation, it is getting more and more simplified and more relevant to the status quo. So if we can make some improvements, I believe that it's going to be beneficial. The question now is how to identify the validation mechanism, and if they don't, the project owners don't wish to enjoy the policies for green bonds, then how should we solve such cases? But answer these questions when they are solved, they will lay the foundation for the steps in coming time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyễn Hoàng Dương, Deputy Head of the Financial Banking Division of Ministry of Finance. To continue, I would like to invite Mr. Trần Anh Quý, the representative of State Bank, to give the presentation about their current status and trends on green credit, granting and requirement on green taxonomy and verification on project finance through green credits. I would like to kindly request gentle reminder, all the speakers stick to the 10 minutes allocated to you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hai, Mr. Tuan, and dear participants. First of all, I would like to express my agreement with all of the comments on the necessity of green taxonomy. So at the same time, I would like to, my presentation focuses on the viewpoints and the direction of the government to support and encourage the green credit growth, and the second part, the current status and the trends of green credit growth in among the credit institution, and number 3, the or the meaning of this green taxonomy for the banking activities. And also we would like to touch up on some orientation and solution to manage our operation for the purpose of green credit development. First of all, regarding the viewpoint, operational viewpoint of the State Bank, since in the period 2014 to 2020, when the green credit regulation were not available, the banking sector is mindful of our assignments to be serving for the green growth. So the first official documents we issued the Directive 03 to promote green credit growth, and with directive to the credit institution to focus their resources on the green project as environmental friendly, to support their businesses to carry out their green growth and sustainable development. The second activities of the State Bank to issue immediately the action plan of the banking sector to implement the green growth strategy up to 2025. That is a decision 2050 to 250, even though that's no longer valid, but the values that are brought about by this still stay valid. This is that really help our promotion of the green growth and low carbon emission, reduction of the greenhouse emission, to help promote green development in all sectors and enhance awareness of the credit institution in order to serve the purpose of green growth. And the third activities the State Bank implemented is to integrate all of the solution and the contents on the green growth into the strategy for the banking sector development in the period 2020 to 2030. That is in enhancing the effectiveness of the credit distribution for the social economic development, to transit the economy into green growth with a low carbon emission, adapt to the climate change, enhancing the proportion of the green credit dedicated to the renewable and clean energies and with the low carbon emission industries. The fourth one, since 2016, to provide regulate on the responsibility of credit institution, and we focus on the lending principle as regulated, provided in Circular 39 issued in 2016 of the State Bank, providing regulation legal framework. That is a very important legal framework for regulating the credit operations. The fifth one issuing the guidance on conducting the environmental impact assessment, even though that is a manual, but plays very important role. So it can be said that all the guiding documents and regulations of the State Bank will reflect a very consistent point of view throughout the operation of the credit institution. That is to say, to focus resources on promoting green economic projects and to have enhancing the corporate social responsibility of the company, possibly contribute to the environmental protection and green growth of the economy. The current status of the credit institution, as you know, that regarding the data from 2017 to end of 2021, State Bank has created the outstanding balance of the 39 credit institution, which the average growth rate in that period is more than 2% per year. As of 30th of June 2022, the outstanding balance reached 426,000 million Vietnam, accounting for nearly 4.5% of the total outstanding debt of the whole economy, and an increase of 2.6% since the point of making this statistical report in 2017. Especially in 2021, we recorded a very high growth rate of 3% for credit distribution, mainly focused on the two areas, agriculture and renewable energies. Outstanding balance of the credit in this renewable energy in 2021 occupy more than 40% of the total outstanding balance. And the structure, mostly credit structure, we focus mainly on the four state commercial banks, big commercial state banks, including banks. Regarding the difficulties and obstacles in implementing the policy mechanism on the green credit, from the side of the state bank, we are lacking of the tools to regulate the market in order to promote green credit growth. So the long and stability in the policy in this banking sector, and especially for areas related to green economy, has not been duly attended. And the difficulty encountered by the credit institution, first of all, according to our surveys, the businesses and companies with green projects, they have a need of a long-term loan for investment and in construction. So they're operating the capital for construction that's required a huge amount of money and long-term loans. So they really need the long-term loan. The production and development process, we miss a lot of information in order to determine that this project is believed to be clean and green. As for the meaning of the green taxonomy for the banking sector, as for the state bank, the green taxonomy plays a role as rendering support to the corporate governance of the bank. Annually, we have a Directive 01 guiding on the operation of the whole banking sectors, and also have an orientation of managing to make sure that green growth in this sector. And for green taxonomy, the state bank has many information in order to make proposal for green growth in line with the requirement of the economy. And secondly, in order to make sure that we have the credit available for the green economic sectors and enhance the effectiveness of the banking sector for the economic development, and ensuring the mitigation of the risks, and come up with in due time manner the solution in the future when the policy and the supportive mechanism properly promulgated. The bank will be in a good position to select the most effective project for the credit institution. The verification process, validation process, identification of risks of the products, all of them plays very important roles for the operation of credit institution. Apart from that, this list of this green taxonomy meet all of the requirements for the state bank to carry out their direction work. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Quy, the representative of the State Bank, for your presentation. I think the green credit has made a remarkable step of growth, and recently you achieved a very high growth rate. But just like Mr. Quy said, we lack of the list. Previously, with the issuance of the list of 9050, that has not included the screening criteria and the threshold and indicators, so that hasn't met the new green growth. You have introduced very important data that reflect clearly, explicitly the role and Mr. Zeung also did make it clear that even though the law has not made it clear about the roles of the green credit and green bond has not been specified, but according to the initial assessment, green bonds will be issued exclusively for the renewable energy over the past 3 years, already very remarkable, in total amounting to nearly 10 billion already. Thank you very much, Mr. Quy. Now I'd like to invite the next speakers. representing the Vietnam Bank Association, I would like to formally introduce Mr. Nguyễn Thanh Sơn, the director of the training center on behalf of the Vietnam Bank Association, to give presentation on the specified topic. Mr. Sơn, please.
Good morning. I am speaking on behalf of the Association of Vietnam's Bank, and I wish you good health and success. And our workshop today will be a fruitful workshop. And ladies and gentlemen, as requested by the Vietnam's Banks Association, we want to be more relevant as an association. We will focus on the implementation of green credit in Vietnam. Green and credit and green bonds issuance in Vietnam, and some recommendations from our association for the development of green credit in the coming time. One part in my presentation has been presented by Mr. Quý, so I will remove the repetition in my presentation. The legal framework for implementation of green credit, legal framework, it is full and complete. As Mr. Quý mentioned, he listed the regulations, decisions, and the documents, legal documents on green credit growth. Mr. Quý provided you with some figures, but I want to put a stress on the fact that if you look into the decision and the plan until 2022, the growth of green credit in 2015, it was $70 trillion. But with the new statistics, we can see that it has increased to 300%, and it is 3 times of the average growth rate. However, the green the VIX is quite still low. To the end of 2021, it accounts for only 37% of the total loans of the economy. So the green credit was increased significantly in 2021 after COP26, and the Standard Chartered Bank committed to ensure $6 billion USD to invest in the green projects. HD Bank of Ho Chi Minh City, together with the SNT and the Financial Development Organization of France, signed a contract of $4 million USD to finance renewable energy projects in Vietnam. And that's why the proportion of green credit in 2020 increased significantly. And it lifted up the total rate of green credit in the whole economy to 4.5%. And it is forecasted to increase to 4.8% in the next 3 years. Financial institutes, as the information I have from the banks, there are 80 financial institutes participated in green credit and green bonds issuance based on the regulation by Vietnam State Bank. In 2021, under the impact of the pandemic, this number did not change, and The activities related to green credit implementation and green bond issuance. Mr. Quee mentioned some on this matter, but we find that there are three biggest challenges for the financial institutes. First, the regulation and detailed definition of projects, of green projects and green industries are not finalized and clear. That leads to difficulties in the validation and issuance of green bonds. Second, the tools for environmental impacts assessment still cannot fulfill the requirements, and there are strict conditions on environmental protection, the complex procedure to acquire loans and credits. So the project owners and investors may find difficulties in acquiring the financial products from the banks. Green credits is considered a priority and green projects are prioritized. However, there is still no mechanism to implement such a priority. 11% of green loans are used annually. So that means the duration of the loans is extended, and the projects are often mid-term or long-term projects, but the loans duration is often short-term. The industries are new solar power, wind power energy projects, and there is a lack of regulation to attract financing from the banks. That's also a difficulty for these projects. And thirdly, it is the difficulties that comes from awareness and acknowledgement of the bank's employees in order to perform green credits and green bonds implementation. They don't have the knowledge and skills to perform environmental impact assessment. And based on these facts of the status quo, we have the following recommendations to promote the development of green credit. As the Prime Minister stated that to 2050, we try to reach net zero emission. The constructive role of the government should be stronger in green credit implementation. In the recent years, we see many challenges that affect the green credit and green financing of projects. They face so many difficulties, and the banks do not wish to get involved in the granting process. The support roles of the government and related agencies are very important. Vietnam State Bank have the official letter 209 in 2017, including 12 green industries with definitions and referrals to legal documents of the ministries and agencies. However, there was no referral to international standard, and I call for your attention on building the regulations so that it is fulfilled. It can fulfill the international standards as well. We should pay more focus on developing a mechanism for validation, monitoring, and issuing of green credits. The green bond market should be paid more attention because it may be an alternative for the financial options of projects that are struggling to find midterm and long-term loans durations, which is under strict regulation. many countries promote the long-term or the long duration loans using green bond issuance. So the implementation of green credit should consider the mid and long-term projects, and from the for the commercial banks, they need to have strategy to develop green credit as a product, and improving the awareness of green growth and green finance for the public, the general public, as people understand more about the purposes of green products and green projects. There are more initiatives and motivation to develop green credits, and also to finance green businesses. We worked with financial institutes, and they recommend that the government may develop a separate institute, a separate module for the validation of green credits and green projects. We can consider maybe we can have 1 to 3 financial institutes who are dedicated to the issuance of green bonds, green credit, and that would increase the efficiency of the whole process. Thank you very much. I'd like to wish you a good workshop today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyễn Thanh Sơn, representative of the Vietnam Bank Association. To continue, I'd like to invite Mr. Tati Bích Thao, the Deputy General Secretary of the Vietnam Bond Market Association, to give presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, to address the issues of climate change, some of the social problems that are of top priority listed in the plan of the government in the period 2021 to 2030 with the vision to 2045 on the corporates guided to do their operation gearing towards sustainable environmental development. That involves many different parties, stakeholders, responsibility to carry out their social responsibility and to preserve the natural resources that cannot be recycled. So therefore, the capital market plays very important role in order to meet the capital need for the sustainable development. Therefore, supporting a long-term sustainable development. Sustainable development can be seen in the growth of the green bond development market. The first issuance of a green bond in 2017 has been issued by the European Bank, and in 2021, the total cumulative of the green bond issuance is 1.6 thousand billion US dollars. For 2021 alone, the issuance of green bond achieved more than 200 billion dollars into apart from the green bond, and that includes a social bond and sustainable bond also issued with the amount of 233 billion and 190 billion by the end of 2021, and by the end of 2022, 68 and 85 billion dollars respectively. And the deal for Greenland issuance of the green bond, 200 billion dollars, and the Vingroup green bonds for sustainable development of Vingroup, especially in July 2022, EVN Finance issued successfully a green bond in the domestic market. And this is the issuance batch using the ICMA's principle of bond issuance. Ladies and gentlemen, the bond market association believe that besides development of the capital market, roadmap for sustainable development is very important for the capital market in Vietnam. We'd like to come up with some proposal for the sustainable development of the bond market in Vietnam. In particular, as follows: number one, consider to develop the issuance of national green bond based on ICMA's standards and principles that can be used as the basis for considering the issuance of green bond in ASEAN as well as some other countries. Some countries already issued based on which, that's Singapore, Malaysia, they have the Sipuk principle, and Indonesia also have the Sipuk national principle based on the ICMA's standard. Secondly, we wish the recommended government to issue the green bond and sustainable bonds that explicitly reflecting the commitment made by the government towards the sustainable development. Creating the supply for the green bond and sustainable development is a key for success, and also ensuring the proceeds we can gain for project development to make sure that we can carry our project as committed by with the investors. Issuance of the green bond can the government based on the national framework and or ICMA's global standard or CBA's standard. The utilization of the national standard or more than one standards for issuance of green bond can be considered as a dual labeling, so as we can solicit more investors. For example, in Thailand, as you know, that Thailand has issued a sustainable bond in August 2020 with the great participation of many individual investors and organizations. In 2022, based on the success, Thailand continued to issue bonds to create a supply for the market and also enhance the liquidity for the market. As of 2021, Thailand has issued 97 billion Thai baht, equal to $2.7 billion the sustainable bond. Some of the batch of issuance, remarkable issuance. In 2022, Philippine government issued sustainable development bond with the terms of 22 years, and given the high inflation rate, French government for the first time issued a green bond valued at $4 billion. Thirdly, we need to consider the development of the criteria for classification for the sustainable investment. This is some criteria to determine the assess for making sustainable investment. And as Mr. Zuong said, the government is revising some laws so that they can have more tax incentives for individual and organizational investors when they invest into the green bond. We will also support and finance the issuers for external reviews. As far as we know, the World Bank, as well as ADB and other development organization, has been assisting Vietnam for businesses who are in need of issuing green bond or sustainable bond. We can ask for the support, but however, they're still pretty fragmented. In one meeting with the working meeting with the Ministry of Finance, we suggested Ministry of Finance can play as a focal point to receive such kind of support. So as issuers can approach Ministry of Finance to ask for this support. Number 5, we need to diversify the types of investors, especially strengthening the investment that involves the states such as FCIC or social insurance to solicit their investment into the green bond issuance, and encourage the organizational investor to invest into the green bond and sustainable development bonds. Next one, attract foreign investments through the tax incentives such as tax incentives for contractors. Continue to build the risk prevention tool to have the foreign investor to have a peace of mind when investing in Vietnam. Next one, attracting individual investors by providing trainings to help them facilitate them invest into the sustainable products. Number 6, to develop a platform to provide information for the investor who want to invest into the bonds or green bond or sustainable bonds. That can be happened in like a transaction platform. In Thailand, they use Bond Market Association of Thailand is a portal for providing the information on the green bond to the investors. At the same time, these platforms can be played as a mechanism for helping out the issuers to extract the reporting. And the next one is to assist for sustainable development, like ESG credit ranking and external reviews. Currently, for the domestic development framework, they are not available. Currently, we utilize, we outsource from other countries. So for that resulting in much more higher expenditures. So we really wish to be companion with the State Bank for one of the coming activities of BMA. We will coordinate with ICMA to organize the trainings and seek for funding from international organizations to carry out the trainings on the green bonds and sustainable and social bonds. As for the comments regarding the participation and the regulation of the green criteria, we will give more input this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention to BBMA presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thảo, for your presentation. And there are a number of recommendations for solution to develop green bonds, and I really support towards the mechanism to increase demand as well as supply. I believe that the government should be the leader in this process, such as the social insurance. This is a big supply. So if there is supply, there will be demand, and there will be a foundation for the market development. So I really appreciate your presentation, Ms. Thảo. We'll go to the second part of the presentations. We have listened to the presentation from the governmental organizations. So we also invited the representatives from the investment fund, commercial banks, and businesses. And the first speaker we will listen to is Mr. Trần Hoài Phương from HD Bank. I believe that you are very interested in this topic and accompanied the Prime Minister in developing the green bonds and green credit. Can you share your experiences in issuing green bonds and also the screening criteria to validate green projects that can be financed by green bonds and green credit? Mr. Phương, please. Yes, I am very honored to represent Commercial Bank in the consultation workshop because the time is running, so I will only address the key points that I want to share with you. There are many words in the slide, but please pay attention to the left hand and read the figures. On the left hand, the total limit for solar banks is about 2,000 trillions billions dollars. So you can see how much it is invested into the renewable energy. In HDB Bank, we are interested in green development. And when I enter the workshop, I feel very happy as I can meet old friends. And there are two people who are special to me. Mr. John Kelly, the representative of the U.S. government, who joined a launch after a conference on the climate change and environmental protection. Dominic and I met with him and discussed with him what can be done for the environment and toward the commitment of the Prime Minister after COP26. I think there needs to be a harmony. The people and the private sectors, businesses, we are one part of the private sector, and we also need the leading role of the government and also the ecology. We should also take into account the culture, and everyone should have a higher awareness on this topic. The circle of sustainability cannot be drawn overnight. We need to have the contribution from every stakeholder, and we should head toward the same direction. One of the effort is green credit, and this is very practical. You can see the figures related to solar power, rooftop solar power, 5 to 10 billion. The businesses are quite small, and this is a new wave, very new business model where people can generate electricity through the solar power and sell it to EVN. When we under the COVID pandemic, we discussed the idea that while factories are being down and the supply of solar power remained the same, so there are some difficulties, and we need to go through this challenge together. And it is. I am lucky to work with a number of international investors. When it comes to solar power, wind power, renewable energy, and sustainable investment, we need to address the institutes from developed countries. Their mission is to rebuild the world after World War II and develop the private sectors. And also now they are supporting sustainability. We worked with IFC, ADB, FMO from the Netherlands. Together we have credit programs that belongs to this topic. Favorable interest rate, actually, it is not lower. We have our responsibility to ensure our shareholders' benefits. So we try to do the best that we can as the one actor in the economy where we lend the loans for projects of 10 to 20 years. In other industries, we might consider carefully, but projects of 10 to 20 years for solar power, we can cover the risks and have favorable conditions for them. So with the partners, I expect that we will be able to provide lower interest rates, maybe 1%, 2% lower. We have agreements with IFC to push it harder in this direction. We have ENS, which is the risk agreement, social environmental risks agreement for projects that fulfill the standards that can meet the requirements of IFC for social society and environment. We need to meet the standards of international institutes, but there are two big challenges if you want to do that. But if you can meet the requirements on the German-US standards, they are quite similar. Let me come to a conclusion. This is a long and strategic journey. We want to become a green bank. I can put it briefly, difficulties and obstacles that we are facing. International institutes have different standards, but I believe that we need to follow their direction in order to attract more FDI into Vietnam to serve this purpose. Secondly, frankly speaking, we don't have the human resource to do ENS and the expert team. We need to put more effort into the training. I am assigned this task because I have 20 years working experience with foreign institutes, so there is a lack of barrier for me. I also want to provide some proposal and recommendation. Commercial bank has the strength to bear the risks. So Vietnam State Bank may have some different treatment for commercial banks such as HD Bank, so that we can put more financing into this sector. May we lower the price of our loans for these project owners, and there should be more training, specialized trainings, so that we can speak the same language and to be more aligned with international institutes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trần Hoài Phương, representative of HD Bank, for sharing some experiences and some remarkable progress and growth of HD Bank in the green credit and green bonds. Especially, I highly appreciate your proposal. Especially, we acknowledge difficulties of the business and the proposal on the training components. Mr. Phương and all participants currently in Monre and MOF and have made some suggestions. And GIZ also work on very big project focused on operational. Once upon availability of the green taxonomy, we will also launch the technical guiding programs and trainings. That is in our plan, especially in starting from March. That project will be implemented to carry on the program. We are delighted to have Mr. Dominic to have time with us. Before Mr. Dominic gave his suggestion to the top leading officials of Vietnam, we're very keen on hearing your comments and suggestions. I remember more than 10 years ago, we have good opportunity to work with Dragon Capital, and they spent 4 or 5 million for sustainable development, including the green development. This is very great initial step and valuable step. I would like to invite Mr. Dominic Scriven, the chairman of Dragon Capital. Thank you very much, Dr. Hai, and good morning, everyone today. I'm very delighted to be invited by the organizing committee to share some of the Dragon's experience. Here we have present Mr. Dan, Mr. Hong, and the Dragon Group, who are very interested in the green finance in general. And according to the invitation, we are business, we are not a regulatory agency. We are focusing on the capital market. So allow me to limit the information we are sharing with you. Just focus on the green bond. As Mr. Hai said, Dragon has been participating for the last couple of years, making green investment in countries in the region, including Vietnam. And as you may know, that we in some deals we also run at loss, and we have also gained some profit. So we have quite some lesson learned, and we review in order to come up with a new strategy to raise a new fund to call for the overseas investment in order to take part in green bond investment in Vietnam. When we do market analysis, we can divide into three groups. One is at a national level group, and the other is somehow medium, with the main focus on the corporate and businesses. The other one more group is a small group focusing on targeting on the individual households. So probably our capability just can cover the second level. That's the second group. That is corporate bonds issued by the businesses. And we also need to analyze to see what are our strengths. As Mr. Phương said, everyone follow his own strengths, even though we do not have a deep expertise. We are a human. We are working for corporate. We need to make use of the overseas network in order to enhance our advantages thanks to the scale. I wonder if you have read the economics journal of the other countries. The cover page has the ESG, and there's recommended to remove these three capital letter. We just focus on the E. That means climate change. We just focus on climate change, respond to climate change, and mitigate the consequences because of climate change. We heard a lot of presentations sharing experiences from different speakers. We talk about verification or not verification, and what are the what is the statement of the Prime Minister in COP26 is quite fair and reasonable. Mr. Phương statement talking about the sustainable. According to our experience, we are immersed ourselves in the ESG standards. So we will take the approach following the general framework as Mr. Jung touched upon, based on ASEAN Green Bond principle. Having studied that, we find it compatible with what we are pursuing in Vietnam, and that framework just touched upon four things. Number one, we need to have a list of all the career profession, and secondly, the bond issuers must introduce in their procedures of a procedure for issuing the green bond, and also procedures for disbursing capital. And finally, they need to have a comprehensive reporting mechanism. I find all of these are suitable with a condition whereby the green bond market is just at the initial phase in Vietnam. Apart from the standards applicable to the issuers, there's a few other points that we're not 100% concluded yet. Firstly, we need to base on whatever the market compliance. That means the market forces to do so. So we are more and a higher propensity to choose what the market wants. So we bias on based on the market law. We need to base on the market law, as Mr. Mike said, that whether we should focus only on the green or also a little bit brown. We are more likely to be towards the direction of brown rather than green. and whether we rely on the credit ranking reports of the institution or the reports of the issuer. So we are more likely to rely on the corporate's reporting responsibility. Last but not least, what the purpose here is to mobilize capital. If our purpose is for mobilization of capital for sustainable development of Vietnam, it is advisable for us to follow the expectation of the funders, the financing agency, rather than relying on compulsory regulation. On the market, if we could raise a fund successfully, it is not due to the law, but it's due to the wishes, a desire, and expectation of the people from the pension fund, from a certain fund, from a certain institution. They express their desire to invest into the green bond rather than being coerced to do so. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dominic, for your sharing on very important points on how to regulate the mechanism and how the investment funds can put in their finance. As we work with big investment funds such as the global climate funds, they often ask two questions. Have you done the classification, and what are the standards, the practices for the classification? I answer them that we are in the process, and we expect to have the green taxonomy by the end of this year. And during the development process, we relied heavily on the EU green taxonomy. So that is the expectation of the investors and investment funds. It is clear that they do expect the green taxonomy. Behind them, their stakeholders, they all have their own criteria. So they expect that we have alignment on the two sets of criteria, and the financing flow from the foreign countries also need to go through the criteria of green taxonomy in Vietnam. Thank you very much, Mr. Dominic. The big foreign investment funds do have expectation for the green taxonomy. We don't have much time left, so we agreed that let's finish the morning session. There is another presentation from a big business, a group that is investing in renewable energy. I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Đỗ Tú Anh, the Deputy Director of Trung Nam Group, to share on the challenges, the difficulties in issuing green bonds and the application of green taxonomy for projects that can be financed through green credits and green bonds. The stage is yours. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you very much for inviting us to the workshop. You called out three objects under the governance scope. At the end of the day, we are the one who may or may not benefit from the green taxonomy. So I'd like to introduce Trung Nam Group. Trung Nam Group is the leader in the private company that is leading in the renewable energy. We started as a business in infrastructure development. We are also doing business in real estate and electronics. Among all the private groups that are operating at our scale, not many are not involved in real estate. So we are very proud to be a leader in the energy industry, especially renewable energy. I'd like to go through the renewable energy projects of our company. There are 10 projects that are generating total 1,700 gigawatts. It is different from projects of our other companies. We developed from the ground. We clear the ground and build the projects and complete project for generations from 11 to 19. These are the renewable energy projects, and they're included in the agreement process. They are agreed to have us to do the survey of natural conditions, including wind, rains, and etc. The other projects are not included in the slide. As we are success in 2016, we will increase the total capacity to 4.1 gigawatts, and we will be recognized as the leader in renewable energy generation. Our commitment for renewable energy development is very strong. We also have commitments in developing technology in Vietnam and accompanying the government in reducing CO2 emissions. Let me go into the details of challenges that we are facing in accessing green credits and green bonds. First, to this moment, I want to go back a little bit. I was quite surprised when I heard that 37% of the credits granted, green credits granted in Vietnam, are for renewable energy. For 4.1 billion, we have to raise for 5 billion USD. And if you are in finance industry, you know that the credits accounts for 17%, and more than 7%, more than 70% of the 5 billion USD are from loans and financing. So that means we are accessing to green credit. Why didn't I know that? So I was quite very, very surprised. Maybe this is a government effort in reporting the green credit, and that's how people attribute these financing to green credit. I mean, when I look at the information, I was surprised. And when I prepared this slide, I dig deeper into the sources of green bonds and green credit. They are originated from international institutes, and there is an inharmony between local and global green taxonomy. So that means if we want to access green credit, we need to prepare a different environmental impact assessment. There are a number of workshops on green bonds. We did work in bonds before I transferred to the banking, to the private sector. And I know that there is a set of criteria to access green bonds from ADB and another from ISP. So I'm very excited that if by the end of this year we have the green bonds, green taxonomy, that would be wonderful. As Mr. Phu mentioned that there is no foundation to reduce the loan pricing. They have the responsibilities of the depositors and also the shareholders. Mr. Mat or somebody else mentioned that They may not wish to enjoy the green credit, but just a commercial loan, because they have to add one more step of environmental impact assessment. The banks have their responsibility towards the stakeholders. If you can raise for 70 billion USD from the IFC, that would be more comfortable for them to finance the green projects or Mr. Dom's effort. As the investors, they do want to perform their responsibility and commitment towards the ESG. Mr. Fu, Mr. Dom, HD Bank, through their 400 million that they can raise, that is under 1 billion USD. But the launch from my group, that is dozen billions, and I see that there is a presence from Daiichi. These are the big players in the capital market. I talk to my friends and I see that they don't have anything that is leaning towards the green credit, and it's the incentive. So I'm very quite unclear to me on how to access to this, and the assessment of projects that can or cannot access to international financing. I talked to actually by Mr. Chung, and I asked them on how to access to the financing. Mr. Kui from State Bank knows that USD loans to refinancing is quite cheap at the moment, but you have to carry interest at a high rate. And my general director, he wants me to touch it lightly on this point. So I don't dare to say that from the private sectors, why we cannot access to the loans from the foreign lenders, because they look into PPA contract, and the PPA contracts have some articles that require assessment, and I ask if our capabilities can generate enough revenue to cover the loans. So yes, these are the challenges that if we are the second, there is no one who is number one in the market in this aspect. So I want to go back to Mr. Kwon of World Bank. What are the preparation steps from 1.28? This is a process of developing a project in my group. Step 1.28 before the completion and generation. 6 months. Before that we need to do the shopping for financial for the credit institutes, and we have to bear the risk of selection for financial institutes from that step. As Mr. Dong talked about ESG, and we should focus only on E but not S and G. This is a good sign as under the assessment of IFC to see if the developers meet their requirements. There are EIA assessment that includes the observations of birds migration, and if the project is in the pathway of the birds migration, then it is not qualified. And I would like to thank them, but we cannot meet their requirements, and the observation time lasts for 2 years. That would be 2 months. That would be too difficult, and there are restrictions of the natural conditions to do the research. And if we move the location, we have to start from square one. And there is also a requirements of purchase land, and if it is we're lucky, we have clean land, and if not, then there will be 2 households in the area, and I cannot solve the problems. That is the S letter requirements in the ESG. I want to go back to, I'm very proud that all of these photos are actual projects that generating energy by Trung Nam Group. We have no projects that do not generate after completion. I've never feel so proud about Vietnam as a country as when I started to work for Trung Nam Group. Green bonds and green credits, we are not enjoying any of them to my knowledge. Let's go back to the loans. We have VP Bank's loans and Green Group's bonds and VIM finance bonds. What is the share characteristic? VP Bank and EVN, they don't touch anything on the resettlement and environmental assessments. We have to handle everything. Second, VM Group, their compliance requirements focus on the buildings, and we need to ensure that the buildings are green. So we really hope that we can have a set of standards, set of criteria that allow our businesses to access green credit from now into the next year. If I cannot access any green credit, I may not meet my KPIs. As Mr. Dom mentioned, I want to go back to in the beginning. You discussed that you are very keen on the environmental issuance and also the operation of credit after we are granted with the environmental license. In order to review the criteria to see if a project is green, I think you should combine the EIA into that step. Beside the concerns by the governmental bodies, you need to talk to the businesses as well to see that during operation, what will be the requirements for compliance and reports by the business. Yes, we should rely on the business reports, but beside that, is there anything else that we need to do for the operation? And the banks, the lenders, should develop a light and easy mechanism so that we can be willing to get a certified for a green project. Or else, if you cannot provide 2% interest rates, then we will stick with the commercial loans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tu Anh, for your presentation. And I think your presentation has made it clear about the current difficulties and open up some suggestion how to tackle the problems. And you put forward the challenges and specific expectation requirement towards the regulatory agency and drafting team who are developing the green taxonomy and draft of the Prime Minister decision. There's one thing that I'm concerned here is a difficulty in the Prime Minister's decision. What is the regulation on the verification that is closely linked to VTM and licensing issues, but that will be carried out later. Must Tu Anh said that for Trung Nam, it takes about 18 months before the projects. They already start hunting around shopping for selecting credit institutions. So based on what criteria? I think not just merely to put the project into green credit or green bond issuance project, so as they can be entitled to the preferential condition given by the government. However, the law on environmental protection still debate a lot, especially on the interest rate issue. Many of them have not been properly addressed. But for the green bond issues, that has been defined pretty clearly as mentioned by Mr. Zhuang. I would like to propose to the drafting team and to groups of experts to take into consideration the suggestion that Mr. Du Anh regarding the verification process, including how to do in order to be entitled to to enjoy the preferential condition given by the government. Thank you very much for the detailed presentation with a specific proposal of Trung Nam. We are running out of the time. Now it's 12:15. If you allow us 15 minutes more, according to initial agenda, we will arrange some time about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, you may want to raise directly in this conference. But given the time limitation, we suggested you to write your question in the chat box or write on a piece of paper. We are nearly to the end of this morning, so could you please spend a couple of minutes to write your comments and suggestion in a piece of paper? It's very important for the group of experts. We are very keen on hearing your comments and inputs, acquiring from your practical experience. We really hope that you spend some time for this task. If possible, during the lunchtime or after that, you can hand back to the organizing committee. And for those who are online, please spend some time to fill out online and send to the organizing committee via email. That would be very valuable sources of input for the drafting team and the group of experts. So to carry on, I would like to invite Mr. Tuan to have a few concluding comments. Thank you very much. After a very enthusiastic presentation and working responsibly, even though we overtime a little bit. For those who haven't had time to fill out the form, you can fill out later and send back to the organizing committee later. We really want what you really want to comment, but not just put on. Now our stomach is vibrating, so let's move our question and answer session to the afternoon. This morning, you heard about different approaches and the way how to develop a set of criteria and how to operate the green credit and green bonds market in Vietnam, and especially the three last presentations of Hoài Phương, Dominic, and Tu Anh. You have gained good pictures of expectation and proposal of the people who are using this. Certainly, there's some proposals that go beyond the Prime Minister decision, as mentioned by Mr. Du Anh about the PPA, the power purchase agreement with EVN, that go beyond the framework of this decision. However, as for the verification, let me share with Du Anh. For environmental friendly project, in the Decree 08, Article 131 to 37, stipulated clearly the regulation of government for the environmental friendly project, of which as a green credit project will be offered compensating interest rate of the state bank. But the commercial bank, they would not reduce the interest rate, but as a secondary investors, when you take loan, green credit loan, and after finalizing with the credit institution, you will be compensated by the government to cover for the interest rates in some periods that may be 2%, other period maybe 3%. So Mr. Du Anh, you can study further into this area. We have invested quite a lot, but we do not know how to enjoy the policy to get the incentive. Regarding Mr. Phương comments, I agree with his comment on developing the green taxonomy. We need to refer to the Asian experience. Our group expert will carry on our work to look into that. But basically, our methodology, we have been on the right track. Hopefully, everything later on will be on track. If at the initial step we are in the wrong direction, that would be misleading us. So to this stage, we are pretty satisfactory. As for verification, let me tell you, we only do verification in the case of individual organizations who are in need of getting incentive from government. That's not applicable for all entities that want to issue a green bond. They must do verification. In the case when they are not in need, credit institution or the validation examining agency, they will verify whether you are in the list of verification or not. If you are in need of getting verification for getting some incentive, you will do that. How to do that? That will be done by state, the governmental competent authority, or by a third party accredited authority agency. So that's something debatable. Out of the 227 conditional industry, there's none profession talking about the conducting verification project to make sure they are meeting the environmental criteria. We try to apply the technological transferal laws like Article 197 to see if we can apply that form or not. In this case, that entity will be licensed for business operations. So we will carry out the verification. Now, according to the method proposed in the draft, this is integrated into the process, and the period of verification stretching out throughout the project lifetime, and only when so we would not let the individual organization lose any opportunity. Depending on the time, we will have specific regulation on the form we apply and the way we apply that. We will work with together with the regulatory agency of the MONRE, State Bank, MPI, MOF, in order to dig further, so that to simplify the administrative procedures and in an open, transparent manner. So with that, we'd like to conclude our morning session. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's get back here at 1:30 in the afternoon. Please, organizing committee, guide our participants to go to the restaurant for lunch. Mr. Bing, please. Organizing committee would like to formally invite all of you to join us and lunch at the Huamai restaurant located on the 5th floor of this building, and resume at work at 1:30. Using the lift, we are on the 2nd floor. Go up to the 5th floor, the restaurant located on the 5th floor. See you later. Enjoy your lunch. Em anh xem này nó bị lỏng dây sao nó cái điện nó bị